If it's not 10, it's not. No, 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 no. We will. Yes. No, the mic, we're live. They're just seeing the screen, so everything you're going to say, they can hear already. So please don't use the microphone yet. Okay. So good that you say that. We're live. We're live. You're already live. Already live. Maybe we use StreamYard next time. Welcome and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, here in the room and at home on your screen. Now we have to get used to these kind of things. So welcome here in Tilburg in this beautiful, in the Cube, actually, the biggest room. I am Pascal. I have the honor today to lead you through this evening. I'm a new citizen in Tilburg since March. So I get to know the city also a little bit, yeah? And we're going to have today, this evening, we're going to have first 3 presentations from 3 lecturers here at the university, and they're going to talk about uncertainty and how to deal with it, which is nowadays really, really, really important. It's everybody has this feeling of, okay, what is now the future bringing for me? And for the future generations, even more, even more. They are fired up. They come, and then this fog comes suddenly, and you don't know where to go. And this is a big question mark. And to fill these questions with answers in scientific research, there we asked lecturers from this university to help you and guide you through this and give you some tips on how to deal with it. The event is organized by the Topweg together with the Studium Generale. And they do this actually throughout the whole year, which is very cool, because if you go with there as a student and you do 5 or more events, you can get even some of the certifications, which are actually pretty good if you put them into your CV. So take the chance and take some action, which also helps you to deal with this whole situation. You know, if you move, then it's always a little bit better than to not move in these times. And we're going to start immediately with the first lecturer, actually. And it will be Ellen Dresens. She is psychologist and she is lecturer at the University College Tilburg. And she is going to talk about uncertainty from a psychological view, from the psychological immune system. So welcome on the stage, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I haven't done anything yet, but it's always good to be applauded up front. I want to talk to you about the psychological immune system, because I think that might help you understand why uncertainty is such a bitch. So I'll talk you through it. And in order to do that, I want to start with a small thought experiment. And maybe the technical people can help me start up my presentation. We wait patiently in the meantime. And I would say I'll tell you about the thought experiment already, but I can't because I need some pictures in order to do that. So let's all feel what it's like to be in an uncertain situation like this one. You don't know how fast the technical people will be. Somebody's running towards us, so that's already good. Please don't fall, because that would be even more uncertainty. Yeah, so we can all feel a little bit what it's like. Yes, there it is. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes. Okay, so I promised you a thought experiment. Let's do that together. And I will give you 5 paintings. They are all by Klimt. If you're not into Klimt, then you just have to think with me anyway. So then just set aside your the fact that you don't like him too much. And I'm going to ask you, could you please pick one of these 5 paintings, the one that you like best, and pretend, this is a thought experiment, that you can take it home with you. And this is actually an experiment that is being done by psychologists in order to understand how uncertainty works. And usually psychologists compare groups. So in this experiment, they had 2 groups. In group 1, they did exactly the same thing as I just told you now. Please pick one of these paintings and then you can take it home with you. However, in group 2, they added something to that. So group 2 also got the instruction, pick a painting, take it home with you. But then they were also said, but you can swap it for 5 days. So if you don't like the painting or it doesn't match the floor or the curtains or whatever it is, you can swap it for 5 days. And now my question to you, and I'm sorry, I cannot really hear your answers, but you can think for yourself, is which of these 2 groups is the most satisfied with the painting after 5 days? And I won't take too long for you to think about this. You know, once while I'm going through the talk, you can keep thinking about this. I will give you the answer, but only at the end of the talk. So you will have to sit with me until the end of the talk. And I want to talk to you about the psychological immune system, which defends us against unhappiness, just like our, let's say, physical immune system defends the body against illness. And the psychological immune system has a couple of things that it does in order to keep us happy, to keep us functioning in a psychologically okay way, so to say. And I will talk you through a couple of these things. It does more than all that I can tell you right now in these 15 minutes, but this is the basics. So how does it do that? First of all, the psychological immune system makes a difference between very big things and very small things. And again, a question to you is, do you recognize the fact that sometimes the small things have a bigger effect on you than the big things? For me, I can get really annoyed when my computer doesn't work. So now I have a pop-up which keeps on saying you have to renew your McAfee subscription. Oh, I really get annoyed by that every day again. It annoys me. But there was also a time, and this is not my best picture, I have to admit this, but this is when I went running and I fell flat on my face. Don't ask me how I did that, but I managed to do that. And this, well, it hurt, and it hurt for a couple of days, but psychologically, it was one cry and then it was over. And then I was, you know, talking to everybody, showing everybody pictures, and everybody said, oh my God. And, you know, I was over it. Whereas the computer thing sometimes keeps nagging. And that is because the psychological immune system can only kick in when things are big enough. So for small things, the psychological immune system doesn't kick in. It means that it doesn't help you to see things in a positive perspective. And therefore, the small things might actually have a much bigger effect on you than the big things. And for small things, you can think about somebody who says something not so nice to you. For big things, you can also think about hearing that you have cancer and you need cancer treatment. Obviously, it will take you a while before you feel okay again, but for the cancer, the immune system kicks in. For the insult, it might not kick in, and then that is when things get bad. Second thing that the psychological immune system does for us, it helps us to evaluate ourselves in a positive way. It shows, or research shows, that people seek opportunities to think about themselves in a positive way. So we've got about 20 people in this room, and if I would ask you, how good are you at driving a car, or how fast are you at running, then I'm pretty sure that 80% of the people will say, well, I'm better than average at driving a car, or I'm better than average at, I'm smarter than average, or I run faster than average. And the interesting thing is, if 80% of the people say that they are better than average, then there's something wrong with the average, right? That cannot be, because the average 50% has to be below and 50% has to be above. So what our psychological immune system does is help us look at ourselves in a positive way, again, because that makes you mentally sane, so to say. The fun thing is that it rejects opportunities to think about yourself in an unrealistically positive way. So if my husband tells me, oh, you're the prettiest person on earth, then I will take that as a sign that he loves me. But if any of you would tell me, oh, Ellen, you're the prettiest person on earth, then I will think, yeah, right. So the psychological immune system knows when things are too positive or too much, and it doesn't take these things into account. Again, a third thing that the psychological immune system does, and I promised you that I would go through things quickly, so that's what I'm doing. It helps us to compare ourselves to other people, again, in order to feel good about ourselves. That's always what the psychological immune system does. So individuals determine their own worth socially, but also personally, based on how they stack up against others, right? So if I want to know whether I'm a worthy person, then probably, since I'm in this room now, I will compare with you guys, and you now know that I will always find positive things to think about myself. So I will think, well, I'm at least a tad better than everyone in this room, but it's in comparison to other people. So we evaluate ourselves, and not only when it comes to how worthy you are, but across all kinds of domains. So it can be how attractive are you, or how wealthy are you, or how intelligent are you, how successful are you. And maybe there's other things that matter to you as a person, and that is then probably what you measure yourself against other people too. And this that's interesting. Okay. The social comparison helps us to decide, the social comparison depends on who we compare ourselves to, right? So I compare myself to different people, and that will give me a different idea of how worthy or how intelligent, for instance, I am. And we do that in order to understand where we stand as people. It's a very basic psychological thing to want to do that. And I'll show you a little bit more about this social comparison. First, Garfield. I mean, you can always use Garfield, right? So he says, well, if you're feeling down, hey, you're not this guy, so that should make you feel better, right? So that's exactly what social comparison is. But I'll give you some other examples. And it's important to know that the psychological immune system, you can do things in a good way, again, to make you psychologically sane, and you can do things in a little bit less of a good way. And this would be the example that I'm showing you, less of a good way. So if I would compare myself as a dancer, and I'm a good amateur dancer, I like dancing very much, I spent a lot of time on that. If I would compare myself to others who have achieved unusually high levels, such as, if you are into dancing, Igonee de Jong, she's from the National Ballet, I think, but also Beyonce, who might be a better singer than a dancer, but again, if I compare myself to Beyonce, probably not the best thing to do. So this could lead, if you do this all the time, measure yourself up to people who have attained very high levels, this could lead to feelings of not being worthy enough, or anxiety about, am I doing right in life? Am I a good person? Am I going where I need to go? So this would be an unhealthy comparison. However, if I compare myself to people that are relatively similar to myself, similar in circumstances. So this is two people who are dancing in my group. We're all kind of the same level. One does certain things better than me, but I do certain things better than these two. Then I can say, okay, I might be an okay person in terms of dancing. Or if I compare myself to me in the past, and I'm sorry that there's no audience participation, because then you could guess which one is me, but it's this one. This is where I'm about 8 or something, maybe 10. If I compare myself to that person, then I'm a really good dancer. I mean, she was great as well, but I really improved in dancing. And this is the type of comparison that will help you, again, keep mentally sane. So that's really important to know. So there's all kinds of ways in which our psychological immune system controls the information that we take into our system and the information that helps us decide these types of things. And we only see whatever benefits the conclusion that we want to draw. So if I want to conclude that I'm a good dancer, then I'll look for information that will actually show me that I'm a good dancer. If I want to know that I'm a bad dancer, then I will see examples of people that are much better than I am. So we kind of unconsciously, so it's not very conscious, all these things that we do, we unconsciously control the conclusions that we draw by picking out certain pieces of information from our environment. And what I think is most interesting, I mean, I kind of know that we do all this, but even when we do that, even when we use biased information, we always think that we are very objective. So we think that we are using all the information or all the sources, whereas we actually don't. So we actually believe in our objectivity. And again, I would say that's a good thing, because if you don't believe in your objectivity, then the psychological immune system cannot work for you. There's a catch. The psychological immune system cannot work for things that are uncertain. So this is where uncertainty comes in. When the situation is still uncertain, it cannot function because there is nothing yet to change, right? So if you feel bad, the psychological immune system kicks in and it helps you to change. But if you don't know how to feel, then it cannot kick in and it cannot change your way of looking at things for you. So when the outcome of a situation is clear, is not uncertain, then we kind of make a story out of the situation. Well, this happened because of this, or there's a good reason for that. That's kind of the story idea. And this story makes the situation become more likely. Oh, okay, now I understand. This is how this works. Oh, okay, that makes sense. And that feeling of, okay, that makes sense, kind of settles down our anxiety and all these things that we might feel. So it makes us able to move on. We need a story out of a situation and able to move on from that situation. But uncertain things cannot be made into a story yet. And that's why uncertainty keeps nagging and it keeps going on in your head. So uncertainty, in terms of the psychological immune system, is a bad thing. Let's get back to our thought experiment. Which of these two groups is more satisfied with the painting after 5 days? And I'm going to do a little bit of audience participation. Who thinks it's group 1 that can only heard, pick a painting, take it home with you? Okay, that's about 90%. Who thinks it's group 2? Pick a painting you can swap. That's one person. Thank you for joining in. So that's the two groups that we had. And it turns out it's group 2. Sorry. I'm spoiling it now. It's group 1. And the interesting thing is that many people predict exactly what you predicted, that if you can swap, if you can still go home and think, oh my God, I made a mistake, many people prefer that option. That's also what we do in stores, right? If they say, well, if you keep the receipt, you can still swap, we think we will feel better about things. But actually we don't. Because the decision of group 1 that don't get to swap is final. They can make a story, they believe that story, and they can just go home and enjoy their painting. Whereas the decision of group 2, which is not final, they keep thinking and doubting. And if you keep doubting, then you will value the thing that you have less. So a couple of take-home messages that you can take away from the psychological immune system. And I heard from the other speakers that you might get a couple of more take-home messages, so it's good. Maybe you can write all of them down. If you can choose between doing and not doing, for instance, getting involved in a relationship, or starting an educational program, or moving out of the house, or traveling, or anything else safe. I'm not going to promote unsafe things, but anything else safe, you should do it. Because if you do it and it goes wrong, then the psychological immune system can kick in and it will help you to feel better about it. If you ask people who are dying, what do you regret most? They always mention the things that they did not do, because the psychological immune system cannot kick in and they keep thinking and they keep worrying and it keeps going and going. And this is what I said. So doing is better than not doing. Choosing is better than not choosing. Because your psychological immune system can kick in, if necessary, doesn't always have to kick in. It will start to make you see things in the way that will help you come to positive conclusions. And that's exactly how this works. And you feel better. So take home message, if you can choose between doing or choosing and not doing or not choosing, go for the first, always better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ellen, for these insights. Very helpful things. So I wrote some things down. Uncertainty is a bitch. That's something what we should all write down. That was one of your first sentences. It was very, very good. And also that compare yourself to your past self. Yeah. That's very, very good tip also to do that instead of comparing yourself to what you see in TV. Although it's we know all that's not completely true what you see there. And what I also wrote down is I'm faster than average.
Are you? Well, you think at least.
I think I'm.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not.
And it's good to think that about one thing, but you cannot think it about everything, right? Then it becomes tricky.
Then it becomes tricky. So thank you very much for these insights.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. And we have our next speaker already. So we have a panel, of course, later on. So write down all the questions that you have, and Ellen is going to be happy to answer these. So thank you, and we see you in a few minutes and in the panel discussion. And the next speaker is Robbie van Acht, and he's going to talk about a very, very interesting topic, actually. I see that we get some help that's Oscar, that's one of the organizers here, so also welcome on stage. And he's going to help us with the presentation. So Robbie is going to talk about uncertainty in scientific methods, a very important thing also that we get some data behind this and that we get some proof. So I'm really curious about what you have to share with us. The stage is yours.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. So I will say something about uncertainty in research and also about its consequences. And I would like to start with a personal story, and the story is about my vacation. So I planned originally, together with my girlfriend, a vacation abroad, but this one was, of course, cancelled due to the virus. So then we had to do something else. So we decided to cycle through the Netherlands from Tilburg to Den Helder, which is in the north of the Netherlands. And it's about 250 kilometers, but we did it in multiple days with stops in between. But then what we also needed to do is we had to cross some rivers now and then. And we crossed these rivers with small boats. And then I realized that it's quite strange that on some of these boats, we had to wear face masks, and on other boats, we didn't have to wear these face masks. So this was quite counterintuitive to me how this could be the case. And this motivated me to look into what advisory bodies of governments actually say about whether you should wear a face mask or not. So I will give you a brief overview. So the first statement by the World Health Organization about face masks was on January 29, and they said that wearing face masks provides you a false sense of security. And the reason for this is that if people wear face masks, they do not keep this distance of 1.5 meters, and therefore the probability is actually higher to infect someone. Then on the 19th of March, they said, again, the World Health Organization, a face mask is not required for people who are not ill. So this is already a bit more in the direction, okay, maybe we should start wearing face masks, but then only for people who are actually ill. And then on April 8th, the ECDC, not ACDC, but ECDC, that's the European advisory body, they said the use of face masks should be considered in crowded areas. So this is a completely different point of view than the World Health Organization at that time. And we also have a Dutch advisory body, which is called the RIVM, and they said on April 16 that face masks do not have added value. So if you use these other measures, it's fine, you shouldn't use these face masks. And then there was some very important piece of research was published on the 1st of June. And this research concluded that face masks may largely reduce the risk of being infected. So then this basically means, okay, all these previous 4 statements, we cannot use these anymore because it's completely the opposite as what this research concluded. And that's also the feeling of the World Health Organization, because on the 5th of June, 4 days after this research came out, they published a statement that governments are advised to encourage the use of face masks when keeping distance is difficult. And later on, the 3rd of August, they made even a stronger case for wearing face masks because then they said, keep distance, wear a face mask, and do it all. So just really use these face masks. So what you see is that also the World Health Organization, who started in January by saying that wearing these face masks doesn't help, a bit more than 6 months later, a bit more than half a year later, they say, okay, we should really wear these face masks. So this is quite a change. And of course, these advisory bodies, they base their advice on research. So this actually shows that there is a lot of uncertainty in research because we see a large change over the time in the policy or the advice by the advisory bodies regarding wearing these face masks. And imagine that for politicians and also for our Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, it's very difficult to deal with this because, of course, he doesn't have any clue about face masks. At least that's what I suppose. And I really like one of his quotes about this, which is, policymaking is now sailing a ship in very foggy conditions. So the foggy conditions refer to the uncertainty in the research, and sailing a ship is now the policymaking that he needs to do. And also, if you look at the face mask policy in Europe, in this map you see a small part of Europe, and you see 3 different colors. Green means that there is wearing face masks is not mandatory. Orange means that's only mandatory in public transportation, and red means that it is also mandatory at public spaces, so public transportation as well as public spaces. And then what is surprising is that there are quite some differences between countries. Well, you would say that the coronavirus, of course, doesn't stop at the border. And what's also interesting is that all these countries have access to the same research, but apparently they are interpreting this research differently and come to different conclusions regarding the policy. So now you might ask yourself the question, is this uncertainty, is this common in research? So my prompt answer would be yes, definitely, but unfortunately it's not always acknowledged. So what you often see is that research is published as very definite and very conclusive with very strong statements. And then researchers tend to ignore this uncertainty. And that's the reason why more recently researchers started to study this uncertainty. And they did this by means of replication studies. So what you're doing in a replication study is that you are trying to redo the research, the previously published research, as closely as possible. And then the idea is, if you get more or less the same results as in the already published research, then you get more trust into the findings. But if you observe different results, then you could say, okay, there is more uncertainty in the findings than, let's say, expected, because 2 different scientific studies on the same topic do not give you the same results. So there's more uncertainty. So multiple large-scale projects, replication projects, were conducted in different fields. And for instance, one in psychology, what was observed over there is that 36% of the replications was not successful. So this means that the conclusions were not the same as in the original study, the original research. Also, I have to say differently, 36.1% was successful. So 63.9% was unsuccessful. So the vast majority was unsuccessful, could not replicate the results. In economics, the results were a bit more positive. 68.8% of the replications were successful. And in hematology and oncology, it was only about 11.3%. 11.3% successful replications. So another question you may ask yourself, why should we actually care? Why does it matter? Why does it matter that there is uncertainty in research? So first, if we take the perspective from, let's say, the society and politicians. So if the uncertainty in research is not acknowledged and not acknowledged by researchers, then you may end up in situations that the popular press picks up a study, creates a nice and juicy headline, and then people who read, for instance, newspapers, catch up this headline, and they think, okay, this is really the case, this is really true, it's conclusive evidence. But then it may happen if such a replication study is conducted, and it turns out that different results are observed, then if, again, another newspaper article appears with a completely opposite headline, then this will lower the trust of us in science, of course. So people don't know anymore what is the truth. And also for politicians, of course, it's very important that the uncertainty is acknowledged because they have to use the research for the policy making. Okay, why is it important for you? Why is it important for you as students? Well, of course, first of all, you want to learn stuff that is correct. And if we again look at the replication project in psychology, then some of the findings that could not be replicated, these also appear in psychology textbooks that are, for instance, used in bachelor studies. So it's important that in these textbooks that also the uncertainty is addressed. So I also have some take-home messages. So first of all, research is the foundation for policymakers and also for teachers. At least that's what I hope. And it's important to always keep in mind that there will always be uncertainty in research. I think what's very important for students nowadays is that you should always question what you learn. So question what you learn and what you read in textbooks, but also question what a teacher is telling you. And actually teachers like this. Teachers like it when you ask questions during the lecture, so please do so. And finally, and that's most important, of course, enjoy your time as a student also in these more difficult times. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much about that insight. And you're absolutely right. Huh? That's today you hear this, tomorrow you hear that. It's like what should you eat? Huh? Today you hear eat meat, tomorrow you hear don't eat it, and the day afterwards again something else. What should you believe in? That's a very good thing. And in times like these, the uncertain times that we live in, we have all questions. And people tend to find easy answers. I would say it like this. Never forget science means learning. That's the thing, huh? That science is improving all the time. So make your own research. And that's very important. Be critic about it. Thanks for that insight. Very helpful. And we're coming to our third speaker of this evening. And it's Ton Wildhagen. And he is also the leader of the impact program of the university when it comes to science and society. A very, very important topic. Of course, when we see it now also in this development of the program, also that you see that it's important that science and society actually form a unity. And that's a very important topic that you work on. So thank you for this. And it's about skill development in these uncertain times that we're going to talk about. So we're really curious about what you have to share with us.
Okay, thanks very much. So also welcome on my behalf. And indeed, I'm going to talk about skills development, labor market careers. I use the word insecurity because that is a word that is being used in labor market research, job insecurity. But it's very close to uncertainty. So, of course, you already were facing uncertainty and security about going to a university, going to this university, making a choice for a certain education, which for many people was really a big job. You know, maybe some people got desperate because they were still looking at all the oversights, all the overviews of what to do, what to choose, and especially, you know, in these times where education is changing a lot. So you did master already a high degree of uncertainty or insecurity. And we, of course, we are very happy that you managed to do that and that you are here or there, everywhere. So this is already the message that I want to share, and that I will work towards this message. So the best way for you, for students, to deal with insecurity in terms of the next step, your studies, and then to the labor market, is really to develop your skills and competence to the full. That is, I think, the most important message. And competence and skills, you have to make this distinction between the hard skills and the soft skills. The soft skills are indeed very important, and they are more important than ever. So why do we get this situation of insecurity, uncertainty when it comes to the future of work, your jobs, your career? Well, because there are many drivers that determine the labor market and also labor relations and work organization. So they are in this scheme. So if you first go to the left to the markets, I mean, whatever is possible in the Netherlands in terms of labor market perspectives, careers, of course, depends on the general economic market, but that market is part of a globalized market. So we cannot really predict, like in the previous crisis, something happened with mortgages in the US. That was a bad thing. And before we knew, we were in a Eurozone crisis. We didn't do anything. Someone did something in the US. So this kind of chain reaction in the global world creates a lot of insecurity. Anything might happen. I mean, if Trump gets angry with Putin, whatever. So this is a very important source, of course, also of wealth, globalization, but also of insecurity. Then, of course, technology, and I will go a bit further into technology in a minute. Technology drives the labor market because it leads to new products, new services, but it also changes jobs, and also it changes the organization of work. And technology is infinite. Technology will always develop. Technology can be used in many ways. So something that's being invented for a certain purpose might be used for something else. So, but I can return to technology. Then, of course, demographics. Demographics is more predictable. So we are in an aging society, which is good news for you because you are a bit like scarce nowadays. So the cohorts of young people are smaller, but it has a large effect that the aging of society means there are more elderly people in the labor market. The average age in labor organizations is higher. So when you go from university to a job, you will have some colleagues might be your grandparent, even, you know, age-wise. So that is also changing. But we know, of course, about demographics, at least the aging. And the other aspect of demographics is migration. And we cannot really predict. We had large flows of migration a few years back. Some people predict that many more people will go to other countries because of the climate change. So they're being forced out their own countries, which means that they also will try to get into the labor market elsewhere. They come from different situations, have different diplomas. The question is, why, if there are any jobs for these people or not. There's also culture. Culture, it seems a soft thing, but it's also a driver of change. So if we get different preferences, then things change. And also in the world of work, you can see that. So a few years back, the supermarkets would be closed in the Netherlands on Christmas Day. But this has changed. And why? Because there are many people that don't really celebrate Christmas Day, and they would really like to work. So students from other backgrounds than Christian backgrounds, they just want to work, and the supermarkets want to sell. So the preferences change. And also, we want the supermarket to be open. any time of the day, maybe even at night, but also during Christmas. So if the cultural preferences change, then the labor market changes and people are expected to work on Christmas Day. So then we have institutions. Institutions are very strange things. They are like laws, but also collective labor agreements that you find in a sector. So agreements are sector-based. And those governments, policymakers, trade unions, employer associations, and many other bodies, they basically try to respond to all these changes. And so, but they create their own impact. That could be a good solution to some of the changes, but sometimes they worsen the situation. Like in the Netherlands, and I will talk about that as well, there's a large trend of labor market flexibilization. It creates a lot of jobs that are, different jobs, because we talk about labor market segmentation. So the government tries to fight back this trend of having a lot of flexible and secure jobs. But the measures that were taken in the previous coalition period, they were really counterproductive. So they didn't really help change the situation, they worsened the situation. So institutions also create their own impact. And why this uncertainty or insecurity is as big? Because any of those factors creates a large impact, but they work at the same time. So technology is pushing, demographics is changing, culture is moving on, institutions are trying to create new policies based on science and research, and the markets are changing. But there's something else, and that was not really mentioned a few years back so much in relation to the labor market. That's the ecology. So the ecology is an overall driver of change, because of course, if the planet really expires, then everything, of course, stops. But you see, the ecology is now driving the markets. So we get more demand for sustainable products, sustainable technology, of course. The culture is also changing. People say, no, I want to buy something locally. I don't want to sort of get this from whatever, because it's bad for the environment. So I want the market to be local. I want to buy my things here, or I want to have some, we need the equipment here for the COVID crisis. We have to produce it here. So ecology, of course, is a very major factor that was not really so much recognized. But actually, the COVID crisis is a crisis that probably is an ecology crisis, which turned into a health crisis and now turns into a social crisis. So it's not just a background variable. So this is creating a lot of insecurity and uncertainty, and nobody can really predict, also at this current phase in the COVID crisis, what will happen in the labor market. Tonight I just published in the Financiële Dagblad, a financial journal in the Netherlands. I write every 2 weeks for this journal, and tonight I wrote about the new support measures of the government. So the government is now paying a large part of the wages of the companies that have lost a lot of productivity, and now the measures expire, and from the 1st of October something has to be done or not to be done, and the government will really announce the measures tomorrow afternoon probably. But there's a lot of uncertainty, because if they withdraw the support, the financial support, unemployment might go sky high. It's rising already. If they start paying the companies that are not very productive, we lose a lot of money, and we have to sort of go into lots of cuts and budget cuts in the coming years. And so there's uncertainty how to influence the economy and the labor market, how not to spend money, how to be effective. So, yes. So job insecurity, it might also lead to stress, and that I think relates to the first speaker. So we see that the number of people in the labor market that reports stress or burnout is quite high. It's actually about 14%. So that is quite a large share of the labor market. So insecurity is a bad thing. It might be inevitable due to all those driving forces. And one thing which is important now, because there's quite some restructuring going on, but we know, and I think you could explain that also from the idea of what the psychological immune system does. But some people now are being dismissed, because they are redundant. And the main thing is, the bad thing is not to have been dismissed, but the bad thing is to not knowing whether you will be made redundant. Once you are redundant, it's the stress level reduces. But if you still don't know whether you can work at the university or tonight, the Efteling, so the big Luna Park very nearby Tilburg, is now dismissing people, and it's a major, park. It's well known in Europe. It has a large number of people. They are always looking for new people, new workers. But now they have to let go people because they also serve as a conference center where companies go. They do a lot of external activities. But now people are uncertain, even at the Efteling, which is such a big, well-known employer. So this insecurity, and now I'm coming back to this labor market flexibilization. I'm not against flexibilization. So I'm sort of known in Europe as Mr. Flexicurity, because I created the concept flexicurity that stresses both sides of the coin. So ideally, labor markets should be flexible, but there should also be security in this flexibility. And this is flexicurity. So I created that in the early 2000s, and the concept was picked up by the European Commission. And in 2007, this has been taken up as a core principle of the European employment policies. So we have to sort of work on flexicurity. The Netherlands seemed to be a good example of flexicurity back then, end of the 90s. But the situation is now that this whole trend of flexibilization in terms of temporary jobs, solo self-employment, on-call work has exploded in the Netherlands in the last 50 years. And especially young people work in this flexible segment. If you look at the contracts, labor contracts of young people, then I think 6 out of 10 young people will have a temporary or flexible contract, which might not be a problem, but the problem is your pay is lower, you get less opportunities for training and education, which is the main theme of my contribution. So you have to sort of be aware that if you're going to enter the labor market in a few years' time, it will probably still be the case that you will get a job, hopefully, if you're not in a very deep crisis, but you don't know if you can keep the job. So you have to change jobs quite frequently. You might even have to change your profession, maybe 2 times in your working life, because you will be working for, 50 years. That is your sort of, don't get tired already, but 50 years is the expectation that you will work. It's half a century you will work. So enjoy, especially as the previous speaker said, enjoy this time at university because you have to work for half a century. So this flexible labor market is a challenge. The good thing is it's easy to get a job in a flexible labor market, but also it's easy to lose a job. And this is why you need to be resilient. And this is why you need to develop your competences, your skills, and I will get back to that. First, of course, yes, we are in a crisis now, and it's very uncertain because we didn't ever experience, at least not in modern times, a crisis that started with a health situation and turned into an economic crisis and a social crisis. So this is an unknown situation. It might be a short-lived crisis, and then people talk about a V crisis. So a V, very sharp, goes up again. It might be a U crisis, so goes down, a bit like this, goes up. But it also can still turn out to be an L crisis, so it goes on. Previous crisis lasted for 6 years. And in a crisis, youth unemployment goes up very fastly. It also goes down very fastly if the economy is improving. But youth unemployment is very vulnerable for a crisis. It's always the double number of average unemployment. Because young people are not in the labor market yet, And so they have to enter the labor market, and they have less work experience. So young people are vulnerable at the very moment. And so we hope the situation improves. But again, this is a very unknown, uncertain kind of crisis. Then I want to go into two of those driving forces. I already talked about the market, about flexibilization, and this is technology. And this is very important because technology is neutral. Technology doesn't really take away jobs, it also produces jobs. So it's about the net effect. So technology is, some people are very afraid that they will lose jobs and there will be no jobs once you have graduated, but that's not the case. Technology also produces jobs. So, but of course, the main thing is technology makes the labor market unpredictable. So if you look at 10 jobs that are quite in demand now, they didn't exist 10 years ago. So app developer only became a job when we had iPhones that had apps. Before if we didn't have an iPhone, there was no use to become an app developer because nobody would know what an app developer does. The same goes for social media manager. So managing social media in a company is very, very important. Uber driver, I mean, no one heard about it 10 years ago. So all these jobs that didn't exist are now there, which means at the very moment that you will graduate, say 4 years' time, or maybe a bit less or a bit more, there will be new jobs. And we still don't know the jobs. So actually, you cannot train for the jobs because we don't know the jobs yet. And that is very important also in terms of skills development. You see also, that's nice for you, millennial generational experts. So there are jobs that look at you, like, what do they want? Well, we know what they want in labor market terms. What you want is not just a good salary, you also want time to do other things. That is what you ask for if you go to a job interview. You differ from other generations because you want to have some time for yourself to travel, which is very complicated nowadays, but also maybe start a company, do something. So you are a bit different. We shouldn't never over-exaggerate the aspect of generations, but you are interested in other things than just work. That is something that we think that you are. So some people are having a job in looking at you, as I said. Then we get, if we look at the technology always was seen as producing skills-biased technological change, which meant that we thought so far, which is still true, that paradigm, that if technology changes, then people with low education will sort of lose the battle, lose the race. Which is, of course, is still true to some extent. Losing the race means that you get lower wages because you cannot keep up with the technology and you're more vulnerable to unemployment. And it's still the case. But there's a second paradigm, and that is important from you, and that is routine-biased technological change. And this means that it's not just the level of education, because you would be quite safe, at least if you finish this education at the point of having a high-level education, but there's something else. And the something else is the aspect of routine. So, and we have two types, you could say, of the tasks that people perform. Work that is really strong on the cognitive side or on the manual side. And what is very important now is that if you look at routine jobs, they can easily be taken over by machines, robots, algorithms, chatbots, whatever. And so we measure the vulnerability, the proneness to becoming unemployed, out of work due to technology, in the amount spent in routine tasks in your job. So if you are a presenter and most of what you do is routine, then it's a bad situation because next time there will be a robot saying, hello, how are you, new students, etc. So if we look at cognitive jobs, which are usually seen as the high-level jobs that are not so vulnerable, if you have a job which is cognitive, but it's really routine based, like sales agents, office assistants, but also like maybe a lawyer, or barrister, someone. If that seems develops into a job with a lot of routine, so you're drafting the same contract over again, divorce contracts, very easy, it's always the same thing, then the machine says, let me do it. I can do it very fastly, doesn't cost much, and you're out of work. On the other hand, the manual worker, which is usually seen as a lower skilled and therefore vulnerable, that could be the case, yes, in construction, in mechanics, but if we shift to non-routine, there's also manual work which is not routine, and that is not easy to replace by technology, or it's not worth because the wages are low. Think of a waiter, which is of course having a very difficult time nowadays in the corona crisis, but the waiter, of course, has to deal with people, that want a drink. People are, well, now they have to sit down, but usually people move, people get drunk, annoyed. So the waiter has to do a lot of things, which is not very easy to train a robot in doing that, because robots are very good at doing things that are quite predictable, but dealing with a lot of rumor, a lot of noise, a lot of changing situations, means that you have to develop a very good robot, very expensive, and is this really worth? So some manual workers have better prospects if they are in non-routine work. And then, of course, the cognitive jobs, non-routine, engineers, healthcare, they also have a good position. So this is already one lesson: avoid routines, because routines are really, really something that technology likes and can easily do much faster and much cheaper. So then we come to the core of my message, my presentation, my angle here, and that is we have to think about competences. And competences is a word of many people, of course, have a feeling that they know what it is, but analytically, we see competences as a collection of skills, knowledge, and attitudes. And these three aspects are very important. Knowledge is important, and of course, a university provides knowledge. So taking education is acquiring knowledge, but of course, the knowledge should be transferred into skills, because I can know a lot of things, but if I cannot do something, nobody will hire me. And so I need skills. I also need fresh knowledge, because if I have old knowledge and I have skills, then I can do something, but I do it wrong because I don't have the right knowledge. If I don't have the proper attitude, the proper way of connecting with people, then I can have good skills and knowledge, but nobody really wants me because I don't have any skills, in doing teamwork, relating to people. So attitude is that you want to do an excellent job, you're able to do an excellent job. And so these three are really connected. So in this time of your life, you have to develop your competences, which includes, again, knowledge, but that changes, skills, and attitudes. So this, of course, is something that we do not, there is no education for developing competences. So you have to develop your competences during your education, in your education, but also outside your education. So maybe we will talk about what to do next to your education. Should you just, do your education, stay at home? No, because we need you to develop your skills also outside the university. So every morning, from now on, you have to look into the mirror. And you have to compare your profile, your skills and competences profile with a T-shape. And the T-shape has, of course, a horizontal part. So the T, which says broad, and this regards your ability to work outside of core areas, to be able to work elsewhere if you start working, that you can change sectors or professions. So you have to work on the horizontal part of the T. Of course, you also need a vertical part, which is about a certain speciality, a discipline, or a functional area, and that should be combined. So if you only have this broad part of the T profile, you lack some speciality. If you only have speciality, you might not be able to work elsewhere if the labor market changes. So every time, and of course the T from Ton, my name, every day, try to see if your profile is developing in both ways. So it's not only this, but also that. So, which means hack yourself. You have to hack yourself. You have to look at your adaptability. You have to update and upgrade your human capital, because your human capital, your competence and skills, is the source of your welfare. This is where you can earn your money. This is how you can acquire income, so you can have a nice life. Your human capital, you should be very, very careful with the human capital. Don't waste the human capital, develop the human capital, and do this in terms of competences, skills, and knowledge. Human capital also needs social capital. So you have, already during your education, you have to build a professional network. You have to know people in business, in the labor market, in work, not only fellow students. And don't start doing this after you graduated. You have to do it already now. So the social capital, the work experience is very important. So a T profile. Then you might be able, if you also take on board the both skills, the hard skills, the knowledge, but also the soft skills, which are still being called 21st century skills, but seems already a bit old because time is moving on. But the thing, what people mean is social skills. And we know from research, if you want to sort of stay on top of the robot, these are very important. Creativity, try to develop it. Critical thinking, of course, this is what we want you to do at university. Cognitive flexibility, being good at teamwork, because people work in teams, and teams are, in companies, multidisciplinarity. They're also mostly international still even, so you have to be able to work in this team environment. But also be good at people management skills, that's very important. Emotional intelligence, this all seems very soft, but it's hard in its consequences. So the robot is not really able yet to do this. Will be, of course, in due time, but robots, of course, they are good in structural things, and they will do that very efficiently. So, and this is my main advice. It might be a bit of a wild advice in the eyes of the university board, maybe, but you have to hack your education. Because to me, it's not so much if you have really made the right choice, whether you're doing law or economics. Of course, it's significant in some way, but the very important thing is how you develop your competence and skills in this education. The academic studies, of course, they provide a bit of a general analytical way of thinking, and which is very, very much useful in the labor market. So you're already on the right track. So no matter what education you're in, focus on these soft skills, focus on digital skills, which of course you might be already quite good at, entrepreneurial skills, and whatever education you take, you have to produce papers, yes, internships, which is, in the old days, internships were not really appreciated in universities, which was, I think, a very silly thing. Because people thought that you might all go work in science, and why then, go about the real world. Of course, most of you will not stay in the university to work there. So in all these products, papers, internships, whatever you do, well, focus yourself on new developments. Try to relate to practice, to the world of work, to businesses. And look at where the change is going. So if you're doing like HR management, go to a startup. Do your internship in a startup. That is somewhere exploring new technologies. Also, sustainability. If you're doing economics, look at sustainability. You can say, no, I want to work in a bank. Google will be the biggest bank, in a few years' time. So look at sustainability. Look at a broader welfare perspective in economics. Also, security, cyber security. So you have to hack your study to make it work. Do your best. Of course, if you do psychology, yes, write psychological papers, but focus on new developments and try to train yourself, get some practice, and also, last remark, keep it real. I would be really much more in favor that you develop these skills and competences than doing like 3, 4, 5, 6 masters. In the labor market, nobody is really impressed, but some students think if I do 2 masters, I will have a bigger chance. No, if you develop your skills and you do 1 proper master, you have much, much better prospects. In a few years' time, and we are working on this, we will have a system in the labor market that will match on skills. In Belgium, this is already there, and we are working hard to also have that in the Netherlands, which means the labor market searches, the systems, now look for people that have a certain education or work experience, but they will look then for certain skills. They don't care what you did, where you're from, what your education is, but the labor market will look for certain skills. So the whole matching system will be changed. It will still be possible, of course, to find an entry into education, but the labor market will be skills-driven. There will be a general standard for skills, and you have to be visible in terms of skills. Develop your skills, and that means you don't have to feel uncertain, insecure. Your certainty, your security will be in your skills, your knowledge, and also in your competence. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this inspiring information. I hope you get something out of it. I'm pretty sure, actually. And of course, in combination with what Ellen was saying, do something.
Yes.
So that's choose something, do something, get going, move. Don't stay like the snake before the rabbit before the snake. Is that an English expression? Yeah, you know what I mean. That's very important. And I have some key takeaways also. Of course, COVID is an accelerator. We saw this development already up front when you're looking at the job market already a little bit earlier. But COVID is a big accelerator, a big teacher in these kind of things. So watch out. You will need these entrepreneurial skills. That's very, very important. There will be more project work and shorter contracts and that. And the school system didn't really prepare you for this. So take this time now that you have as a student to really invest in these things. Take a lot of practice that were really good handy tips from Ton. Take them really serious because they will help you on your way. And of course, the most important tip that was enjoy your student life. That was a really good one. So thank you. And we're going to start now with the discussion. So the two. Also, please take a seat. Oscar is helping us, and the 2 representatives of the students. If you could join us, please, on the stage. Just choose one of the chairs. If that's okay. So, do we have another microphone? Yes. I'm going to share it in a second. And luckily, Ton, I'm not a presenter. So I don't have to worry that much. So I'm going to give you also a microphone. So maybe from the student representative, when you hear now what you heard from the experts, really that you get some insights. Of course, in a short period of time, in 45 minutes, to get that. When you process that a little bit, do you have a question that you can already ask to one of the experts?
Well, of course, thank you for giving us all this information. And I think it was really helpful information. And I think you explained everything really well. And yeah, I would like to ask, how do you think that students should, because you, of course, explained a lot about that students really have to hack their education. They really have to make something extra. And what do you think is really something that people in the labor market are looking for that a student can actually do? Like, what should they learn? What extra skills specifically do they need?
Well, I think there are many. So one very important one is to is presentation skills. So in many jobs you get ample time to pitch something, to say something, but also in science. I mean, if you have this research proposal, you get 5 minutes, and if you fail to present your brilliant ideas, your ideas will not become selected. So you have to be able to have good presentations, and that is something that seems quite easy. But good short presentations that people understand and get inspired by, that is a very important skill. So just to mention one. Teamworking also. So you have to be able to work with different kind of people from different backgrounds, not just your peers. And that is, I think, a very important skill. There's also a skill in, like you said, in being able to work in terms of projects, to start a project, manage a project, finish a project, report a project. Seems quite, self-evident, but it's not. Some people start something and it goes, everywhere and goes nowhere in the end. So there's quite a long list, but also the entrepreneurial skills. So if you just sit back, just till other people offer you something like a job opportunity, you have to create it. So many people that have a job have actually created the job. One, because they had the network. A second, they came with the idea. An employer will just, usually, if there's someone with a good idea that can do something, then a job is being created. It's not like we have a job and we want something. No, the job is usually created also by the person that's going to work there. So entrepreneurial skills is not just about how do I start a company, but it's an attitude, which is one of the core elements in these competences.
Great, thanks. If you want to, I will just share my microphone.
I want to add to that because I think, Ton, you're right to say that there's many different skills that you could develop, right? But please go for the skills that fit with you. Because if you go for skills that are not, that don't fit with your personality, you might get a job that doesn't fit your personality. So we are always trying to become better people by working with our weaknesses. But I would say go for your strengths and develop these. And then if you can show that to an employer, and obviously there's a couple of basic things, right? You need to be able to present, but if you're really, really bad at presenting, you'll never get really good. So maybe you can develop a skill that you are already kind of good at, and then you can, excel at this.
Yeah, but still, I mean, sometimes you have to push yourself. So for instance, I don't know if any lawyers, legal students or students of law are watching, but in the big law firms in Amsterdam, they used to say to me, people from Tilburg University are very good, even better than from other universities, but they're so silent. They don't really say much. They are so modest, so shy, so everything. And this is a bad thing because these people know, of course, they will still hire you because they're very good, but it's a bit of a shame that you are not so much responsive and taking initiatives. And this, of course, you can push yourself a bit to do it a bit more than you did. That you can learn.
Yeah, I think that's also really important because we as a student party, we also care a lot about personal development and we really want students to excel, but I think it's also really important that they feel good with themselves, but always go for the extra mile.
Well, I had also a question because I spoke a lot of students this week, and a lot of students are quite hesitant to do something besides their studies this year because of the coronavirus, of the measurements. It doesn't look that bright for them this year. That's what they think. And what would you recommend to them? What would you say to them to?
You know my answer, right? Go and do, please. And I think that's also what Tom says. Please go and do all kinds of things. And then if you fail, you fail. But then at least you know that, well, you need to improve or that you need to find something else. Or so sitting at home and waiting until things are getting better, I think is the worst thing that you can do. It's a very logical thing to do or to want to do, but it's the worst thing that you can do, at least from my perspective.
Yes, and there are many organizations already that you can join, like Serve the City, and that also helped in the past COVID months. Elderly people, with food or support or making them less lonely. So there's a really, really good work to do, but it also will improve your skills. So you will do things what you would not do at the university, because you will go into neighborhoods and see people that you would not necessarily see if you just remain in the safe academic quarters. And I think that's a very good thing because Tilburg has many of those organizations, has an outreaching program, has many student associations. So don't think that the COVID crisis should keep you staying at home, because that is not, it's very difficult to develop all those skills and competences if you only do that, by yourself and only do that in a virtual way. So go out and don't be afraid of going out.
Yeah, so I also think that it's now important for the student associations themselves as well to basically a bit of reinvent themselves and come up with innovative ideas to deal with this, to do it more online as far as possible. And I think this is the right time for it. And there are also at student associations, there are a lot of very clever people that want to invest time in this. So I think are also able to do this. So I think it's also a big opportunity right now.
I agree with you guys. Thank you. Yes.
Thanks, because I want to challenge you a little bit more about this, because what I heard, I completely agree what you said, Ellen. I work also a lot with students, and one of the questions that I ask them is, what is your talent? And there is a big question mark I see always in their head. And when you don't know about your talent, you cannot turn it into a passion. When you cannot turn it to a passion, it's everything what you say is afterwards. That's a big, big thing, a big question mark. Do you have any tips how they can do that?
I'm not sure if I have tips, but what I can say is that it's kind of logical to, in this phase of your life, not know exactly who you are yet and what you're good at and all of that. But this is the phase where you can explore. So that's why I'm also saying try to go out and make mistakes, because that's, even when you find out that it's not for you, then you learn that, right? And then you understand what your talent is. And usually also when you ask people, when you go to a training on which job fit you and which jobs don't fit you, if you look back at what you were doing as a child and what you really enjoy doing, that probably gives you the direction that you might want to take for the rest of your life. And also, another thing I want to say, I also talk to students a lot. They always think that the choice that they make right now is for the rest of their lives, but it really isn't, right? So I'm not sure which of the two said it. You might have 3 or 4 or 5 different careers, and everything is changing so fast. Everything is so uncertain. You have to deal with that. So if you find out what your talent is or what you really like to do, and take some time to do that, then you can use that in all these occupations.
Yeah, I agree. And the learning experience is a great experience. You might all remember that, there was the time, at least, especially for Dutch people, that you learned to ride a bicycle. And when the support side wheels were removed, you could do that. That great experience, being free to go, and not really fall off the bicycle. So the learning experience is a very positive one. Being able to do something you couldn't do, and now you can do, that is a great experience.
I have a question then still to Robbie. You talked about acknowledging uncertainty. That's very important. When you see now that it's when this uncertainty turns a little bit into a fear, how can people then acknowledge this? Because that's a situation where a lot of people are in when they don't know to see it. How can you give them some not a tip maybe, but maybe your view on this? How they can deal with this uncertainty a little bit more, to acknowledge it, to embrace it, maybe even?
So you mean really people, not really focused on research. You do not mean research.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you embrace the uncertainty? I think first of all, it's very important to see that there will always be uncertainty, so that you are aware of this. And that okay, if you are at a point that you really have to make a decision, that okay, there is uncertainty, and now try to pick the best choice, the best option for me. I go for this option, and then see how it develops. I mean, if you have to make a choice, then I would say, even if there is uncertainty, weigh all the different advantages and disadvantages, and then go for a decision. So I would say, don't be afraid of making the wrong decision, but just take an objective, make yourself an objective person, look at the situation, the advantages and disadvantages, and then choose at that point in time the best decision.
I think that's a very, very important tip for you guys, because making decisions, make the decisions, because what we then always, or what I always hear is, yeah, but I want to do only good decisions. And then you say, okay, where does it come from, good decisions? What do you need for this? Experience. Ah, experience. And where does the experience come from? From making bad decisions. So that's exactly it. So very, very nice that you phrased it like this. But of course, Ton, I have also another one, flex security, a really nice claim, by the way. Um, the students are not really prepared for this work, for these kind of things. So the tip from you is do these kind of things, of course. Is it also possible to how can I say this, to have their kind of a ritual in this, that they get used to this, that they create some habits in that kind of way? I think that's also very important, to not lose this possibility, which also is now right on the track right now.
Sure. And some people, of course, many people have side jobs, which are also quite useful because you learn to deal with clients, with managers, etc. These jobs are also quite temporary. But the main thing, of course, is that if you have to change job or make other decisions, then the main thing is that your social capital, your network is very important. As I already said, that's your social capital. If you can keep up your income level by making also timely transitions, don't stay in the job, if it's going nowhere, then you make a transition. Also, be aware that it's important also to keep a good eye on your finances, because in your labor market careers, it's important to have a buffer, to have some savings. So you could say, well, how can I save? Because I have, study debts, etc. But it's much more important now to be able that you say, okay, I'm going to do something new. If it goes wrong, I can still, for 3 months, I can just survive because I've saved some money and I'm using that. I might also, you will probably in the new pension system be able to even get some of your pension already. So you have to also be, enhance your financial self-management to be able to have this buffer if you're sort of in between jobs, that you can survive and go on. This is very important. Probably, of course, also policies will change, but flexicurity really depends on your access to training, your interest in training, and of course, as I already said, your skills development. That is your insurance in the labor market. And of course, your social network is very, very important, especially for people that will be self-employed. You have to know people, you have to see where the assignments is, how to promote yourself. And then even this crisis, many people are just still sailing quite nicely through this crisis because they are the resilient people that know how to do it. And this is something you don't learn here, you have to learn yourself, and also, of course, do it during this period of your life.
Absolutely. Human connection, very, very important thing. You have to people have to know who you are, what you do, and how good you are. If they don't know, then it will be quite a lonely journey. So get connected to people. I see that you have another question.
I just have something to add. I think that these are uncertain times, and I think that's a point that has been made clear this night. And of course, you have to learn by making mistakes. But also in these times, don't be afraid to reach out for help, because we are from the student representatives, and we will always try to make sure to do what's the best for all of the students. And if you're facing problems, then don't be afraid to reach out to us, because we are always here to help you. And these uncertain times, I think they really bring new problems, because we are facing things we've never faced before. And new problems also need new solutions. So if you have like innovative ideas, like don't be afraid to reach out to us, to Student Party SEM, for example, because we are always there to help you. And we can always try to see if your solution maybe is really something that also our university can help.
Absolutely. When I just to support what you just said, reach out and ask for help. It's very important because the Ton said something about stress. When it becomes into stress, stress releases cortisol. Cortisol puts your immune system down. So that's also really not good for yourself. But if you reach out for help and gratitude comes in and all these things, the human connection, oxytocin, we know these kind of things, then your immune system gets even better. You're not only happier, but you're even feeling better. So getting these human connections, asking for help, very important in your student life. Don't be afraid to reach out. That's a very, very good point. Thank you for sharing this. So do we have some questions from the chat? I'm looking at our chiefs above in the sky. On the screen?
The screen.
No. On the screen? Nope. Can you help us?
It's coming.
Maybe?
Oh, yeah, something there.
There, oh, there. Then I will just move quickly to that side. So, questions from participants for speaker number 1 and 3. So, for Ellen and Ton, could they say something about self-development versus self-inquiry? Could self-inquiry be a better way than self-development in the pursuit of seeing your abilities grow in development? So it's about self-inquiry and self-development. Do you think that the self-development, or by the way, self-inquiry is a better way than self-development?
Well, I'm going to be really honest with you. I'm not really sure what self-inquiry is. I can now come up with a story about what I think it is, but it's a tricky one for me to answer because I don't really know what the difference is between these two things. So I don't know if the person in the chat can add something to it, and we can maybe wait a little bit, do another question, and then get back to this one because
Introspection.
yeah, but then I still find it difficult to know what is the difference between introspection and self-development, because for me that's kind of the same thing. Self-development might be more focused. Yeah, it's also not. It's all focused on the inside, I think. You know, the way you look at yourself, the things that you know that you can do very well. So please, yeah, I see something is coming over there. Yes, so this is another question. Yes, can the speaker share some must-read, a book or an article that they would suggest to students? Oh, yeah, just one. Well, there's a book that I think is very good. It's called Stumbling on Happiness by Daniel Gilbert. So it's really about not only how to become happy, it's not a self-help book, but it's more about, for instance, the workings of the psychological immune system. How do these things work? Why is it quite tricky to become happy if you think of it in terms of wealth and all these things? So if you thought that my talk was interesting, then that would be a good book to start with for a good read. Do you have any books, Don or Robbie?
Yes, but it's maybe better to also somewhere, put that on the website or anything.
Maybe that we can, if you can share some books and some articles later, and they put that on the website. Is that possible? Yes, we see.
Yeah, so
Robert, you want to share something?
Very, very short. What I can say is that if you want to learn stuff about the uncertainty in science, then I would just Google reproducibility crisis, and then you will get a lot of information and interesting articles, both scientific and more popular press focused.
Thank you. And you get already the next question is for you, Robert. How much uncertainty can there be for a research to stay trustworthy?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And of course, it depends, as always. But what I think, once again, is that science is very useful. We need it for policy making, so we need it in our daily lives. Maybe most of the times we don't see it directly, but it's really there. So it's really a task for researchers to, when they explain their findings to the general audience, which is becoming more and more popular and also needed from different sides, that researchers really mention that it's uncertain, so not make too strong claims. So what I often see is that researchers share their research on Twitter, for instance. Then they only have 280 characters, I think, to basically describe what they did. But of course, in 280 characters, you cannot add all the nuances that you need to add. So therefore, this is a bit tricky, and I think researchers should be careful with this and really explain that there is uncertainty, because that's also needed for the more general audience who actually consumes the research that we create, for instance, at this university.
And actually, all the researchers, that's a good challenge for you guys to train your critical thinking. What we just heard, that is one of the points, what is a key to the future. One last question, and that's for Ellen. And that's a good, can you train your psychological immune system?
Actually, the question has already kind of been answered in what we've been saying so far. There's a couple of things that will help you stay mentally sane, so to say, even when there's uncertainty, and that is your connections with other people. And in all the research about the psychological immune system or about happiness, it is really only about connections with other people. So don't try to think, I have to be wealthy or successful or all these things. If you are connected with other people, that will give you a buffer to defend yourself against anything that is negative. So if there's one thing that you need to do, go and do whatever you want to do, first of all, and then reach out to other people, ask for help, join in projects together, because that's the most important thing. And that might be a way of training your psychological immune system.
If I can add something to that.
Of course you can.
Yeah, so Student Party Sam also thinks it's really important that people have like a good psychological immune system. And that's why last year they put in an initiative about a student well-being day. And this year it will be organized for the first time. So if students of course it's important for all students, but if you want to learn more about it, you can always follow us on social media, and then they can always see the event passing by.
So before we get to the ending, unfortunately, we're already there almost. Maybe we can make a last summary, what your tip is for the students, what your last tip is for the students. Maybe we start with Robbe. If there's one thing what you have to share still for the students.
Yeah, so it was already a bit in my presentation. That's really question what you learn. So be critical, really be a critical thinker, and ask lecturers questions. If you doubt, okay, is this really true? And also if you read things in textbooks that lecturers advise you to read, really question what you read and ask questions, discuss complicated stuff with other students. So I think that's really important. Question what you learn.
So become a critical thinker and become better at it every time. So that's a very important thing. Ellen, what is that's your tip? Thank you for this. Ton, what is your number one tip for the students to summarize?
One really important thing is that you are now in a very historical situation. So we never experienced this. So you are a generation that goes to university right now. You can sort of feel depressed because you say everything is online, there's no one else that I really meet. But you could also say we are going to be the heroes of this new era. So we are going to create a new common. This is the new common is a term we have worked during the holidays on a book with 50 people from the university, 50 colleagues, and this book will be presented on September 19. So our thesis is that we want to contribute to a new common in this pandemic situation that will be better than the old common, which actually is responsible for this corona kind of outbreak. So try to establish a new common in a new way. So you can be either the generation that is depressed and feels like being very limited, or you will be the heroes of a new common. And I think that would be the perfect attitude also for Tilburg students, to not get depressed, but to innovate and to transform, and also share that with the wider world. So you can actually provide new keys to a new future that doesn't have to be worse than the old future. It depends on us. And you are the talents, the generation that is really in a position to make things move, instead of accepting that the world is more difficult. And I wish you a lot of success. And I think we will also be open for that. So if you need support, if you need internship opportunities or jobs, I mean, we know this region, we have contacts, we have ideas. So in terms of open up, Go to your teachers, to your lecturers, ask them things which might be unusual. Doesn't only have to be about your papers, also be, what should I do? Who do you know? What can I do? How can I innovate and improve? So that is, I think, the general advice. Open up and make it work.
Thank you for these words. Dimi, if you heard now today everything what you heard, what is your your take-home value of this?
Well, I feel really motivated if I hear all these nice things about get out there, do your skills, work on yourself, develop your skills, don't be afraid. I think we are a very resilient community, and we're ready for this. It's very uncertain what's going to happen the upcoming year, but I know if I already look at the associations, what they're already doing, if you look at the top week, that they're doing in sort van hard times, and it still works. People still have an introduction. So I really do believe that this is going to be a great year, even though it doesn't look that bright for the students. So.
Yeah, so I think that what Dami just said, like, she's absolutely right. It's really important for us, like for all of the students that are here now, like we are facing a new time. So search for new solutions and search for opportunities and just make it happen.
So to end this symposium today, so thank you first of all, Robbe, for being here, Ellen, Ton, very, very helpful tips for the students in these times, even more for the student representatives to come out to make this happen. Thank you for the Top Week for organizing this. Also to say that's a lot of work. We know that. That's we appreciate what you do to this. Also to the Studium Generale, very important that you have these kind of networks. And these kind of uncertain times, they will leave spaces for questions. But the question for you is, are you going to create the answer, or are you going to wait that somebody else is doing it? So go out, do it, help us create the answers that help us in these times. And good luck with that. See you next time. Thank you to everybody, and enjoy your student life.
Mm-hmm.